aging is the big enchilada. It's the thing that if we can do something about slowing the rate of aging, it's going to change everything.
We have shown in our labs every day we can extend their lifespan, but not only their lifespan, their health span. And this is what we're most interested in doing. This is not science fiction, this is science now.
Uma nova abordagem à saúde está a dominar o campo da investigação biomédica. É uma maneira completamente diferente de encarar a forma como envelhecemos.
How do we change the conversation in this country about what it means to grow older? That we need to do away with these outdated stereotypes and myths about aging and really start sparking new solutions so that more people can choose how they want to live as they age.
Os maiores nomes do mundo da investigação estão a mostrar-nos o que podemos fazer para criar um modelo para um envelhecimento saudável. Temos o poder de controlar o destino da nossa saúde.
The time has arrived for a new paradigm, and that new approach is to slow or attack the biological process of aging itself and how we need to really alter the way in which we think about aging, longevity, and disease.
We have the capacity to do great things at any age in life because the brain actually wants continuous challenge and learning. We should be in a mode in life in which we're continually learning new skills. We should be continually working to improve.
35% of Alzheimer's is preventable by lifestyle. In terms of what you need to do, it comes down to sleep, handling stress, social interaction, exercise, learning, diet.
We could have almost everybody being a centenarian without dementia and without the chronic illnesses if we ate an ideal diet. I'm saying right now is that the body is already disease resistant if it's fed properly.
Viver com vitalidade, viver com alegria, viver com saúde durante o máximo de tempo possível. Descubra os últimos avanços científicos e crie um modelo para um envelhecimento saudável em Envelhecimento Incrível, dando vida aos seus anos. Por que envelhecemos? E, sobretudo, o que podemos fazer quanto a isso? Não sabemos bem a resposta para a primeira parte da pergunta. Felizmente, investigadores no campo da biomedicina estão a desenvolver um novo modelo para o envelhecimento saudável. Há 4 coisas simples que podemos começar a fazer para que possamos desfrutar das nossas vidas tanto tempo quanto possível. E preocupar-nos menos com doenças crónicas relacionadas com o envelhecimento. O acidente vascular cerebral, o cancro, a doença cardíaca, demência e Alzheimer. O que mudou? Os investigadores já não estão a estudar estas doenças de modo isolado. Criaram uma nova abordagem que encara o envelhecimento não como uma coleção de doenças graves, mas como um processo biológico único que pode ser especificamente identificado e tratado.
Aging is a developmental program. Think about an apple that begins as a small flower and then it's a small green bulb. It turns red, first it's sour, and then it gets sweet. That sugar turns to starch, and then it doesn't taste so good, and then it starts to rot. I don't look at aging as disease. I look at it as a process from the embryo to the end of death, reaching a peak of sweetness like a fruit, and then starting to, at that point, decay. The question is, when we think about aging research, is how do we make that apple taste sweeter and juicier for a longer time?
But you can be healthy at any age and life can still be good. Aging has a biology. This biology can be targeted.
Let's just say I had a magic pill. We could give it to all 50-year-old women and they would never get cancer. What would the effect be on life expectancy? Turns out it's about 3 to 5 years. It's because even if we cure those things, we still have all of these other diseases of aging that are continuing to increase exponentially. The impact on life expectancy, at least for that typical 50-year-old woman, is about 20 years, with the added value that those extra 20 years are spent in good health.
Os investigadores querem refletir esse salto na esperança de vida no maior número de anos que podemos viver de boa saúde. É um conceito a que chamaram longevidade versus vida útil.
When I give a talk to a lay audience and I say, I really would like people to live 30 years longer, a lot of times people say, oh no, this sounds awful. I'm going to live those last 30 years in a hospital bed. No, that's not the idea. What we want you to do is be healthy 30 years longer. And then they say, oh, well, that's different. That sounds great. How do we start?
Uma boa forma de começar a compreender o envelhecimento é fazermos um exame do mundo ao nosso redor. Por exemplo, como fazem as outras espécies para envelhecer bem. Para o Dr. Steven Ostad, esta abordagem obrigou-o a procurar um lugar bem inesperado.
Well, the main thing I'm studying right now are clams, like the clams that would be in your chowder. Only my clams are special ones. They live 500 years. That's right, they live 500 years. They have a beating heart like we do. So there's a clam out there whose heart has been beating since before Shakespeare was born. And we want to know, how do they do it? How do they keep their muscles functioning? How do they keep their heart going? All that time.
A pesquisa do Dr. Ostad encaminhou-o para um conceito chamado agregação proteica, um processo através do qual secções de tecido no nosso corpo acabam por se aglomerar, gerando vários problemas à medida que envelhecemos. Ostad descobriu que moluscos com 500 anos conseguem prevenir essa agregação de proteínas.
Some human diseases, particularly brain diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, are accompanied by these clumps of protein called plaques and tangles that occur in the brain. Somehow, these clams are preventing those things in all of their tissues. Even if we take the human protein that causes Alzheimer's disease and put it in a soup that we got from clam tissue, it refuses to aggregate. It refuses to form these clumps. We think this may be a treatment for many, many human problems, not just Alzheimer's disease. The work suggests that nature's invented ways to prevent this certain pathology that destroys lots and lots of people's health.
Uma intensa pesquisa laboratorial com outras espécies e organismos é importante para a descoberta da base biológica do envelhecimento. Esta pesquisa ajuda a revelar aspectos práticos que podemos respeitar diariamente para melhorar a nossa saúde.
As we've begun to understand the basic processes that contribute to aging and recognize that in animal models you can expand the health span of those animals so that they act healthier as well as living longer. We've translated that into saying that we want to enhance the health span. So we now have a lot of basic research that suggests that there are things that potentially could be translated from those animal models to humans.
O segredo para o bom envelhecimento assenta na transposição de resultados de laboratório para uma rotina simples de seguir por qualquer pessoa. Os investigadores com quem falamos criaram um modelo para um envelhecimento saudável com 4 partes. Uma dieta saudável com muitos vegetais e fruta, exercício regular e consistente, como fazer caminhadas ou jardinagem, interação social positiva, como ver amigos, jogar cartas ou golfe, viver uma vida com significado e propósito, fazer voluntariado e ajudar os outros. O primeiro ponto na construção do seu plano é a nutrição. E há muitas mais informações inovadoras sobre nutrição do que se poderia pensar. Podemos começar por investigar um conceito com uma longa história na pesquisa do envelhecimento: a restrição calórica.
Relatively early on, we found the first thing that seemed to slow aging, which was feeding laboratory animals less. When we did this, it seemed miraculous. They not only lived longer, they had a better memory, they were resistant to infections.
Our bodies have a number of genes that control how fast we age. These are protective genes that are in all of our cells, and they respond to how much we eat. So if we diet, they get turned on. Now we're learning how to turn those genes on with little molecules that we could one day just pop with a pill. What we're doing is tricking the body into feeling as though there's some adversity. It's a bit hungry, or we've had to run a marathon recently. So the body responds by making new blood vessels in muscle, or improving memory, or fixing the liver. And what we find is that our mice behave exactly that way. If you give them our molecule, they can run further, they can think better, their organs function in a young way again.
Alguns investigadores tentam transformar esses processos celulares em intervenções médicas. Talvez um dia no futuro possamos tomar um comprimido e alcançar os mesmos resultados obtidos no laboratório com restrição calórica. Já existem alguns medicamentos, como a rapamicina, que demonstraram resultados positivos em testes laboratoriais controlados.
Rapamycin is the best example because the big breakthrough discovery in rapamycin, it was started to be given to mice that were the equivalent of 60 years old. Now, nobody planned that. It was an accident. In fact, if they had asked me, should we do this experiment, I would have said, no, you're wasting your time. But they had the mice. They were ready to go, so they went ahead and did the experiment, and those mice lived almost 40% longer than the mice that weren't getting the drug.
We know that if you calorically restrict a mouse, for example, you can make that mouse typically live up to 50% longer and is protected from most, maybe all, of the common diseases of aging. My lab focuses on many different aspects of aging, but one of the factors that we study is a factor called TOR, which stands for target of rapamycin, TOR, and this is one of the central mechanisms by which cells sense how much food is around and then make a decision, is it a good time to grow and reproduce or not? And if there's not a lot of food around, it's better to shut down growth and reproduction, become stress resistant, and as a byproduct of that stress resistance, you live longer. Rapamycin inhibits this TOR pathway, kind of tricks the cell into thinking there's not a lot of food around. That also slows down aging and so far has been shown to increase lifespan in mice by up to about 25 to 30%. That hasn't been optimized. It might be possible to get more. But even if you think about 25 to 30%, that's pretty substantial. So if we do an extrapolation to humans, you know, that might be an extra 2 decades of healthy life. That would be pretty neat.
Por mais fácil que fosse tomar apenas comprimido, esse dia ainda está bem longe. Mas há maneiras de implementar os conceitos da limitação calórica nas nossas vidas de forma simples e com segurança, para colher os benefícios da longevidade.
If we eat just 25 calories a day too much, that's about 10,000 calories a year. After 10 years, you're 30 pounds overweight. But if you eat 25 calories a day too little, you won't lose weight. Your metabolic rate will slow down. You'll age slower. You'll add years to your life because you're not aging as fast because you're under 8 calories just a little bit. You have to eat a large amount of produce to be able to under-eat calories a little bit comfortably. So that's the secret.
How can you practice caloric restriction? How do you know how much to eat to still get enough sustenance? You can use your hands for this purpose, where you can take your fingers and put them overlapping on top of each other and then cup your hand like this. Now the amount of food that fits in that space in your hands is probably good enough for you each meal. And then you don't have to worry too much about what the food is, except try to keep it healthy.
With a healthy diet, rich in fruits and vegetables and beans and nuts and seeds, we can live longer.
Bom exemplo desta abordagem é a dieta mediterrânica, que tem sido estudada e recomendada desde há décadas.
Fresh fruit, leafy green vegetables, whole grains, olive oil, a little bit of red wine, all the seafood you want, not much animal flesh, not a lot of dairy. This diet now has been shown in a big randomized trial in Spain to actually prevent cardiovascular disease, reduce high-risk people from getting diabetes, reduce breast cancer, just all sorts of wonderful outcomes, and this is only after 5 years.
Os resultados parecem ser positivos, mas o autor e investigador nutricional Dr. Joel Fuhrman argumenta que podemos fazer ainda melhor.
I made an acronym to make it easy for people to remember what these foods are supposed to be eating regularly, and that acronym is GBOMS. It stands for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries and seeds.
O Dr. Fuhrman tem plano simples que irá incorporar esta receita na nossa vida diária.
Have a big salad every day with a delicious nut and seed-based dressing on it, and put, berries and, make a healthy salad. And on the weekends, make a big pot of vegetable bean soup. So you put mushrooms and onions and vegetable broth in there in the base, and make it real healthy, and have a salad and soup and a piece of fruit for lunch. And my work has shown that when people eat foods that are higher in micronutrients and lower in calories, when they get that micronutrient adequacy and take in a high level of phytochemicals fitting every peg in every hole of nutrients humans need, then it naturally decreases the appetite. With nutritional excellence, with real attention to the science to make the diet, to idealize a diet, even with people's genetic weaknesses, we could all live to have a healthy life expectancy. So I'm here to motivate people and to give them hope and to let them know that if they want to have great health, they can have it.
Na Universidade de Stanford, o Dr. Tom Rando investiga algo que parece demasiado bom para ser verdade.
In the early 2000s, we found that the blood from a young animal could make an old animal look younger. The cells look younger, the tissues look younger, the animal looks younger.
Parece o enredo de filme, mas não é ficção científica. O Dr. Rando é especialista em endocrinologia e analisa as propriedades celulares da corrente sanguínea humana. O seu laboratório está a investigar como certos fatores celulares no sangue podem proteger-nos contra os danos do envelhecimento.
We really do understand this whole field of endocrinology, which is how components of the blood are secreted from one tissue, go to another tissue, and have an effect. We just don't think of aging in those terms, or we haven't until recently.
A utilização que o Dr. Randall faz do plasma ou dos produtos sanguíneos como forma de terapia é muito semelhante à que experimentamos nas intervenções médicas comuns, tais como o uso da insulina com pacientes diabéticos.
It's not that you give the blood and that therefore stays in this person forever. Rather, you give it and the components of the blood, maybe the proteins, maybe the lipids, maybe the metabolites, affect the tissues for some period of time. The question is, how often do you need the therapy? So it's not as if you can give an infusion of blood, you reset the aging clock, and the person no longer ages. No, the person still ages, maybe a little slower for that period of time, but then, without a doubt, would have to be re-administered.
A descoberta do segredo que torna o sangue jovem mais dinâmico pode responder a outras questões que desafiaram os investigadores dos tecidos durante décadas.
Regeneration is one of those things we take for granted, but to me is still one of the miracles of life. You cut your skin and it heals itself. I mean, can you imagine you break a dish and suddenly the dish fixes itself? You would consider that a miracle, and it would be. But we take for granted that our tissues have this endogenous ability, for the most part, to repair themselves.
Os cientistas do Instituto Buck de Pesquisa sobre Envelhecimento também pretendem desenvolver intervenções terapêuticas concentrando-se no que acontece a nível celular. Para a investigadora Judith Campisi, o processo começou quando ela investigava um dos processos celulares mais complicados, o surgimento de cancros.
When cancer researchers first realized that mutations, not that you're born with, but mutations you acquire as an adult, are a major driver of cancer, they also had a conundrum. And the conundrum was, we know that these cancer-causing mutations can start very early in life, and yet most cancers don't happen until over the age of 50 or 60. So why is that? It turns out evolution is pretty smart. Evolution had to keep people with a 30-year difference in lifespan safe from cancer as long as they were having their babies. And the way evolution did that was to provide the genome with genes that act primarily to suppress the development of cancer. And one of those mechanisms is to cause cells to become what we now term senescent.
Cellular senescence is a process whereby normally dividing cells stop dividing. Some of these cells produce a range of factors that cause inflammation. These senescent cells that accumulate with aging and also appear at the sites of age-related chronic diseases are also themselves resistant to dying, so they can kill or damage cells around them and at a distance, but they themselves are resistant to dying.
Think of them as little pumps that are pumping out toxic molecules in the surrounding environment, things like inflammatory molecules and matrix remodeling molecules and tissue remodeling molecules that ultimately lead to tissue deterioration and inflammation and aging-related diseases. That if we get rid of those cells from an organism, we can prevent the onset of a large array of age-related diseases. We've looked at different diseases to see where those cells seem to be driving the aging process, and we rid the body of those cells, we not only help that disease, but we help a number of other health parameters.
Investigadores da Clínica Mayo descobriram uma maneira de remover as células senescentes de uma certa estirpe de ratos.
What we found in these mice that by clearing 30 to 70% of senescent cells, we could alleviate a lot of dysfunction that occurs with aging.
O Dr. Kirkland e outros investigadores acreditam que removendo as células senescentes com uma intervenção baseada em drogas, podem ser capazes de tratar certas doenças associadas ao envelhecimento, como a doença cardíaca, pulmonar e a osteoartrite. No futuro, os resultados deste tipo de pesquisa poderão assumir a forma de medicação ou até mesmo de um comprimido. Mas há algo que todos podemos fazer para otimizar as funções celulares do nosso corpo. Praticar exercício. Treino regular numa bicicleta fixa, caminhar, fazer jardinagem, dançar. Há tantas maneiras de incorporar movimento na nossa vida.
So we've shown very clearly that exercise is adequate to prevent the accumulation of senescent cells, particularly in the context of obesity. But even in healthy aging, we know that markers of senescence are reduced in those who are more physically active.
O exercício faz-nos bem por uma série de razões. Primeiro, tem um impacto forte no sistema cardiovascular. Dilata os vasos sanguíneos e reduz a inflamação. O sistema inflamatório é ativado pelo exercício regular. Mas ao contrário da inflamação crónica, desliga-se quando o treino acaba. O exercício consegue influenciar o corpo através de vários sistemas.
Exercise is so important because it's a way to fight inflammation in the body and brain. If we can turn down inflammation in the body and brain, that'd be one way to slow down the aging process.
If you exercise, your body operates for a longer time period more efficiently.
A number of clinical studies that have demonstrated that exercise decreases the risk for cardiovascular disease, decreases the risk for diabetes, for hypertension, for stroke, decreases the likelihood of disability, and we've not found a lot of risk associated with it. Now, how do you get people doing it? Well, you need to find out what motivates them, what it is that they want, and to negotiate with them about that.
A implementação de um regime de exercício é um desafio para a maioria das pessoas. Mas o foco na motivação e em objetivos específicos ajuda-nos a criar um plano de exercício que podemos manter a longo prazo. Mais uma vez, a consistência é muito mais importante do que a intensidade.
People often ask me, what should I be doing? I lift weights, I do some balance exercises, and I try to walk so much per day. Is that enough? Is that okay? And instead, maybe the best thing we can do is reverse that question and say, what would you enjoy doing? Right? What do you like to do that you know that in a week, in 2 weeks, in 2 months, in 6 months, in 2 years from now, you'll continue to do those types of activities.
You don't even have to work up a sweat or accelerate your heart rate. All you have to do, especially if you're over 65 or 70, is walk. Walking has been the intervention in a number of scientific trials that have demonstrated benefit. Cognitive benefit, improvement in memory in people who walk 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
You know, yeah, you have 30 pounds to lose, but, you know, you can start off slow. So it's an incremental sort of thing. People need to think of it in that fashion and need to work with their healthcare provider in establishing goals and understanding what their limits might be.
I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that particularly as we age, getting out and doing new things is very important. And what I would argue is that it should also really involve some form of exercise because it challenges both the brain and the body in new ways in terms of coordination.
Como em qualquer bom modelo, os componentes funcionam em conjunto e trabalham de forma sinergética. Assim que nos sentirmos um pouco melhor, o outro passo é mais fácil de seguir. Assim, dieta e exercício podem fazer uma diferença significativa na forma como envelhecemos. O Dr. David Sinclair tem uma teoria sobre por que razão é assim.
So we know diet and exercise are good for you. But the question is why? And what we now know is that when you do these things to your body reacts. It thinks that it's under threat. Maybe you won't survive. Maybe you need to run from a lion or you need to survive a famine. And there are these genes that are inbuilt. They exist in our cells and they get turned on during adversity. And what happens when you run or you stay hungry for a little while is that your body fights back and turns on its natural defenses against diseases and against aging itself.
O estado de equilíbrio saudável no nosso corpo chama-se homeostase. Esta é uma maneira de o corpo resistir e mostrar resiliência ao longo dos nossos vários sistemas.
Homeostasis really is a fundamental concept of biology, which is that if you perturb a cell or a person, perturb meaning you give someone an illness, the body has this natural response to bounce back to the middle. Make someone too hot, they try and release heat to become cooler again. You make them too cold, they clamp down to become warmer again.
A homeostase nunca é estática. É um processo dinâmico que ocorre em centenas de sistemas em todo o corpo, numa base constante.
When we are young and our blood pressure goes high or our sugar goes high, our resilience or homeostatic capacity, our Weeble self-centers us back to equilibrium. Think about your resilience as your weeble wobble. You know that toy from the 1970s? You know, you push it in a kind of self-centers. That's what nature gave us. When I go into a restaurant now, my eyes don't open up enough. My pupils don't open up enough, so it's too dark. When I go outside, it doesn't constrict enough, so it's too bright. In other words, it's my weeble that doesn't self-center. These are all the subjective experiences of aging, the objective things that we can't feel. In some of us, those numbers stay high, and we give it names like diabetes and hypertension. Instead of trying to improve the state of the body, we should improve the capacity of the body. Blood pressure is too high, and you lower the blood pressure to equilibrium. You're propping it up with a drug. What happens if you stop taking the drug? It actually gets worse. What's a much better way to treat high blood pressure? Well, it's not to lower it with a drug, it's to raise it with exercise. So the reason exercise lowers blood pressure is because you raise it and you actually promote your own ability to lower blood pressure. It's increasing capacity.
Por outras palavras, o corpo é uma máquina de cura. As duas primeiras partes do modelo preparam os nossos corpos a nível celular para lidar com o stress que todos nós enfrentamos. A dieta e a nutrição apropriadas dão às nossas células a energia para funcionar e o exercício ajuda-as a fazê-lo o mais eficientemente possível. Com estes dois elementos, podemos concentrar-nos na compreensão do stress e usá-lo como uma força positiva nas nossas vidas. Um conceito que os investigadores privilegiam quando estudam o stress é chamado hormese.
The idea behind hormesis is that a certain amount of stress beefs up your anti-stress responses and makes you much more able to deal now with a larger stress. So this has been shown, for example, with radiation. Low levels of radiation can protect you from a higher level of radiation. And again, it's the matter of balance. I personally believe that the kinds of stresses that most of us professional people living in a developed world face is good for us. I think it keeps our brains sharp, it keeps our blood flowing.
So in other words, when we're calorie restricting or going hungry, we exercise, that's a form of hormesis, a little bit of stress on our body, and it makes our bodies more resilient, fight back, and that can make us much healthier and probably even live longer as well.
Not all stress is bad. As a matter of fact, I would say that no stress is bad. Our brains respond to challenge. It's what drives plasticity. It's the helpless type of stress that can lead to hormone changes in the brain that can actually result in degeneration.
A doutora Emily Rogalski, investigadora da Northwestern University, estuda a função cognitiva nos idosos. Ela vê o impacto da hormese na sua pesquisa. Na verdade, a resposta ao stress parece ser indicativa do quão bem uma pessoa envelhece.
They haven't necessarily had easy lives. They come from all walks of life and all backgrounds, and they've encountered stressors, they've encountered traumatic events, but the way in which they commonly respond to those is they take it in stride, and they don't let it negatively affect or impact their life.
A hormese só funciona se o nosso corpo também for capaz de responder aos desafios que definimos para ele. À medida que o corpo envelhece, tornamos-nos menos capazes de lidar com esses desafios.
Aging is the inability to adapt to stress. As you get old, the same kind of cold can kill all people, right? Being sad or being under a lot of pressure can really even affect your immune system.
A doutora Cuervo estuda uma forma de tornar os processos celulares mais eficientes, particularmente na remoção de danos celulares, e como esse processo pode influenciar o envelhecimento. A sua pesquisa confirmou que as más respostas ao stress podem complicar o processo de limpeza celular.
When you are in a condition of stress, and just call it like, sadness, depression, or the normal stress of every day, you are generating products that are going to damage your structures inside the cell. If you have more damage or you are more stressed, then these cleaning systems eventually start working less, and that's going to make your cells in your brain to feel worse.
A forma como gerimos a nossa experiência de stress, bem como a forma como aproveitamos o poder da hormese e da homeostase, pode ajudar a ganhar resiliência. E ganhar resiliência dentro do corpo é a chave para maximizar o nosso potencial de envelhecimento.
So think about it as system dynamics, metabolic dynamics, inflammatory dynamics, blood pressure dynamics, right? So in terms of lifestyle advice, I would encourage people to increase their variance. Like even exercise, don't do the same thing every day. Do different routines in different order. Because what you want to do is you want to promote robustness. You want to promote resilience.
When we talk about resilience in the brain, we're talking about bulletproofing the brain against pathology that arises with aging. So I say this because after 40 years old, just about everybody is developing the plaques and the tangles that cause Alzheimer's disease. The question is, why do some people get the disease at 60 or 70 and others get at 80 or 90, or some die close to 100 without it? And what we're discovering is that while the plaques and tangles that come with aging push you up the mountain, it's inflammation in the brain that throws you off the slippery slope. And we're seeing brains once in a while of folks in their 80s and 90s who had no cognitive issues when they died. And on autopsy, you see so many plaques and tangles, the pathologist says, this must have been an Alzheimer's patient. No, they were perfectly fine. And what those rare cases have in common is somehow the brain of these people did not react against those plaques and tangles and pockets of cell death with inflammation.
A phrase that the psychologists use to define resilience in aging is cognitive reserve. So we've known for a number of years that people that have had rich early lives tend to be safer at an older age. And you can demonstrate that all across this process of their lives, they have sort of more cognitive capacity. Well, cognitive reserve is a direct index, to my mind, I think the science strongly indicates, of brain health. This is a trainable commodity. And when I look in a brain that's been trained in this way, I see all of these things have changed. All of these things that relate to the health of the brain have changed.
O envelhecimento não é algo fixo, pode ser mudado. Assim, a velhice não é necessariamente uma trajetória linear para a doença e a disfunção. O nosso estilo de vida, a forma como escolhemos viver a nossa existência, tem um efeito profundo na nossa idade. E seguir o modelo destes peritos em envelhecimento pode fazer uma diferença enorme.
There are people who make it out to extreme old age, past the age of 85, whose minds and bodies are operating with a level of efficiency that is not that far different from people in their 40s and 50s and 60s. How we live our lives is how we drive our bodies. And if you drive your body very carefully, you don't push your foot on the accelerator and experience aging very rapidly. It's called biological plasticity, and we now know that aging is indeed very plastic, that there are things that we can do.
A dieta e o exercício são as pedras basilares do nosso modelo para um envelhecimento saudável. Podem contribuir para novas reservas de energia, memória melhorada e clareza de raciocínio, uma boa noite de sono e, acima de tudo, o retardamento das doenças crónicas. Com dieta e exercício regular, a gestão saudável do stress é muito mais simples.
Many of us look at stress as being motivation. The part of life that really gets us going in the morning is this ability to think that we can handle the stress, that we have a sense of control over the stress that we perceive in a number of life domains. And one important part of this, I think, is sociological in terms of people's social networks and their perception of the strength of support that they could call on if needed.
A interação social é o ingrediente secreto na receita para o envelhecimento saudável. Os seres humanos são animais gregários e a interação é uma verdadeira chave para o bom envelhecimento. Também pode ser algo divertido. Os cientistas estão a dizer-nos para almoçarmos com os nossos amigos mais frequentemente.
Social engagement is critical. Isolation is a common problem with aging. Many of us are interested in finding solutions for that. Some of the solutions, interestingly enough, might be through technology. And when you are removed from social interactions, your brain is not getting that stimulation it needs to maintain that very high level of performance. So we're increasingly learning a lot more about the value of human-human contact and that rich interactivity and how beneficial it is for us.
So there was a famous study done in Baltimore by Dr. Linda Fried called the Experience Corps, where she had older retired individuals volunteer, and they volunteered intensively, 15 hours a week with young children. And they did this for a year. And then they saw that the students did better, and the volunteers felt better. And then they looked at MRIs that they had done on the volunteers, and they found in what we call the executive function portions of the brain was enhanced in the volunteers.
It's really important you sustain your social connections when you're when you're older, that you sustain a social life. And there's nothing more valuable in your social interactions than to adopt a charitable and positive view of the world.
What they were able to find in that study is that the older adults who did the volunteering had, better quality of life, more sense of a purpose in life, better health than those who were not involved in it.
A interação social é essencial na manutenção de uma saúde forte e vibrante. Mas ter uma razão para interagir também é muito importante.
A re-emerging theme that consistently comes up is this incredible importance about meaning and purpose in life. And I'll give you 2 examples where we see people really facing challenges. Number 1 is you've been dedicated to your profession for 30, 40, 50 years, and now you retire. Why are you getting up today and the next day? Some people really have a struggle with that. A lot of us don't plan on what we're going to do during retirement. What's going to be your meaning and your purpose during retirement? A second very challenging phase that we see people struggle with, is particularly in prior generations, is the fact that you've maybe been taking care of a spouse for your entire career. They were the breadwinner and you were the homemaker. And now that individual has passed away. Now what do? We don't often talk about transitions from being employed for 40 years and then retired, or being married for 40 years and becoming widowed, and thinking about ways to optimize those transitions. And there is an element of community behind that.
When a physician sees an older person, in addition to asking, do you smoke cigarettes? And what is your diet like? And how much physical activity do you do? You should be asking, do you volunteer? That question needs to become one of the core questions, because we have found as little as 2 hours a week of volunteering makes a difference.
One of the most important modifiable factors under our control that promotes longevity and cognitive vigor is social connectedness. The number of people you interact with, not in a business transaction, but in conversation, how big that social network is directly related not just to survival, but to physical and cognitive vigor.
A vitalidade cognitiva e cérebro saudável são essenciais para o bom envelhecimento. Seguir o nosso plano de envelhecimento saudável pode ajudar a manter o seu cérebro em grande forma.
It's important to always think about the brain as part of your body. That's what it is. Anything that's beneficial for your body should have benefits for your brain, just like any other organ. So the lessons that we learn from the world of cardiology about the things that are important for a healthy heart apply equally well to having a healthy brain.
Também pode exercitar o seu cérebro enquanto exercita o corpo. O declínio cognitivo pode ser evitado aplicando o nosso plano de envelhecimento saudável ao cérebro.
When we're building exercise to help improve brain function, we think along those lines of interval training. We also think, just like you have personal trainers in the gym that understand you and they know how to target your weaknesses, they also know how to push you and motivate you, but we try to use technology to do that so that you can interact with a software program. We often do that in the context of a video game so that it's fun and enjoyable. So that's really where we're heading into the future, is thinking about how to use technology in that way so that it becomes a personalized cognitive fitness trainer.
As perspectivas de usar a tecnologia para salvar o cérebro do envelhecimento são tão emocionantes como promissoras. Mas o Dr. Gazala está bem ciente de que alguns adultos mais velhos se sentem intimidados pela ideia da tecnologia.
When we do research studies, and we've done studies on thousands of older adults, we see that when we introduce it in a way that is adaptive, meaning that it finds their ability level and challenges them appropriately, they enjoy the games that we create and they enjoy interacting with it. And when they see their ability to improve on it, it's even that much more pleasurable.
We really emphasize for older adults the importance of staying cognitively active. It's learning a new language that you haven't done. It's trying a new sport. If an older adult has been a runner their whole life, try something else. All of those different tasks, activities, hobbies require your brain to be flexible and your brain to think in new ways. How am I going to solve that problem? This is something new that I haven't encountered. And so we're always keeping the brain active and youthful in that way.
You have this capacity to change, you have this capacity to move things in a positive direction. Now we know a lot about how to do that by re-engaging the brain, engaging it more intensely in everyday life. Well, why not choose positive growth over decline? It's sort of your option. After all, you are in charge of what happens to your brain because it changes as a function of what you do. So what you need to understand is what you need to do, the kind of things you need to do to drive those positive changes, and you need to get busy doing them.
Atualmente, não há nenhum comprimido mágico que possa remediar os problemas cognitivos. Mas o plano que estes cientistas sugerem, dieta saudável, exercício, interação social, significado e propósito, pode realmente ajudar.
What we do in our laboratory is maybe not try to cure it, but try to keep your brain as strong as possible throughout your lives. So we see that these two approaches of developing, a molecular approach that can fix this problem, as well as keeping your brain strong no matter what happens to it, as working together.
Mesmo a forma como encaramos o próprio processo de envelhecimento pode influenciar como envelhecemos. É como no velho ditado, somos tão jovens ou tão velhos como nos sentimos.
We find that the brain can control the pace of aging. When we manipulate mice, just in their brains, we can actually make them live a lot longer. So what we think that means is that your attitude, what you're thinking, and how you feel can actually affect your whole body and how it ages as well. So we have a lot of evidence that the brain affects how long you live. For example, in mice, if you manipulate certain parts of their brain, they can live 20-30% longer. So that could explain why, if you have a certain attitude or you keep your mind active, your whole body can stay young as well.
O melhor exemplo que temos de acordo com este modelo é o de um grupo chamado Super Agers. São pessoas na casa dos 90 e 100 anos que mantêm boa saúde e funcionalidade.
We're trying to find a way to take the advantage that exists among current centenarians, people who live past 100, and supercentenarians, people who live past 110, who may not be experiencing many of the kinds of fatal and disabling diseases that the rest of us experience at younger ages. Clearly, those folks are aging at a slower pace. Find out what it is about them, perhaps their genetics, a particular gene, or some protein or fat that is circulating in their body, and find a way to figure out what that is and secure that advantage to the rest of us. That's where aging science is headed.
O Dr. Nir Barzilai, da Universidade Albert Einstein, tem estudado os super-agers há anos, na esperança de decifrar o código que produz estes centenários saudáveis. O Dr. Barzilai trabalha com Lily Port, de 104 anos, estudando o que parece protegê-la dos desafios do envelhecimento.
So, centenarians are very rare. It's very complex, and it's not only the genetics, that is, it's not only changes in the DNA sequence that are important, but there are things that we call epigenetics on top of the DNA. And so we are unfolding a lot of mechanisms that are part of the aging.
If you have a bad habit, like you're not eating right or not sleeping enough, not getting enough exercise, 60 days of a new habit actually starts to reprogram your gene activity, what we call gene expression, so that it becomes automatic. If people know that it really only takes a couple of months of sticking with the same discipline choices every day to rewire the brain and to reprogram gene expression, thanks to neuroplasticity and epigenetics, you're never too old to make the choice to start living the right way and making the right lifestyle choices.
Entender o que acontece no funcionamento cognitivo dos super-agers está no cerne da pesquisa da Northwestern University.
Superaging focuses on a particular type of memory called episodic memory. And this is a type of memory that's vulnerable in aging and particularly vulnerable in Alzheimer's dementia. The superagers, their memory performance is supposed to be as good as individuals 20 or 30 years their junior.
Edith Smith, uma das participantes do estudo, tem 103 anos.
Her memory performance is as good as individuals who are half her age. So you're talking about a 50-year difference. The superager brains actually looked better than the 50-year-old brains in one particular region. That region is called the anterior cingulate. And when we look at that region, since it was thicker, it led to new hypotheses. In the anterior cingulate was an abundance of a type of neuron called a von Economo neuron. In fact, they're 4 to 5 times more abundant in superagers than they are in normal agers.
Os investigadores continuam a estudar o papel que os neurónios de von Economo podem desempenhar na longevidade saudável e querem compreender algumas das diferenças mais básicas entre os superagers e os restantes. Há esperança de que um dia os cientistas sejam capazes de criar soluções para todos nós.
We think that we can learn a lot because it's relatively rare, and what we do find might be more valuable in that way to be an actionable or modifiable factor to help people live long and live well.
O trabalho da Dra. Rogalski com os superagers reafirma o seu compromisso com o lado positivo do envelhecimento e os benefícios de seguir o projeto para uma velhice saudável. E mesmo que os superagers não sejam cientistas, parecem saber intrinsecamente que os benefícios do nosso plano são reais.
I do something all the time. When I stopped teaching in 1976, somebody came and said, "Would you like to volunteer for Goodwill?" I said, "Yes."
Edith pode não ter consciência, mas está a seguir o nosso plano. Fez voluntariado durante muitos anos. Outra superager, Barb Schaefer, privilegia o significado e o propósito ao procurar aprender ao longo da vida.
I go to school at Northwestern 3 days a week. I take courses that are just fun. There are no grades, no tests, no anything else. It is peer-led, so you have to be part of the conversation.
And when I see these people who say, "Well, I can't walk," what do you mean you can't walk? What's wrong with your leg? And if you haven't had a chronic disease, there's no reason why you can't use your arms, can't use your leg, and can't use your head as well as you can. I think that's what helps in getting old.
Na verdade, o bom envelhecimento é uma questão de compromisso. Empenhe-se fisicamente com uma melhor nutrição e exercício. Aplique-se mentalmente com uma estratégia de aprendizagem ao longo da vida. Envolva-se socialmente em voluntariado e mantenha-se ligado à sua comunidade. O Dr. Rudy Tanzi, da Harvard Medical School, sintetizou estes conselhos num acrónimo para ser mais fácil lembrar os princípios fundamentais do projeto para o envelhecimento saudável.
I like to use the term SHIELD as an acronym. S stands for sleep. You have to get at least 8 hours of sleep. The brain actually gets rid of debris like the plaque that can form and cause Alzheimer's disease during deep sleep. H is handle stress. Take on a meditation practice. It can do wonders. But also learn how to manage that and how to manage expectations of yourself and others. I is interaction. We need to stay socially engaged. We're social beings. If we're not socially engaged, our body and brain are not happy. If you're not staying socially engaged with people, your body and brain can turn against you. E is exercise. Exercise is so important because it's a way to fight inflammation in the body and brain. It helps the cardiovascular system, obviously. But exercise also can cause the birth of new nerve cells in the brain. L is learn new things, meaning that you need to form as many new synapses in your brain as you can every day. Every time you learn something new, you make new synapses, new connections. And because learning is based on associating the new thing with what you already knew, you strengthen the synapses you already had. So I tell people, when you're ready to retire, spend just as much time on building up your synaptic reserve as your financial reserve. And in Alzheimer's disease, the degree of dementia correlates mostly with the loss of synapses. And the D of SHIELD is diet. And when we think about diet, limit sugar, limit fats, and especially limit junk food and processed foods, because these are all pro-inflammatory foods, and it's inflammation that is your greatest enemy as you get older.
There was a researcher, Maria Fianaroni, who demonstrated that people who exercise, even when they're 80, 90, and 100, experience benefits that day. We're talking about rather dramatic changes that occur that you can feel on a day-to-day basis. So there's no reason why an exercise regimen or even a diet regimen adopted at any age, 80s, 90s, even past 100, won't work. It will work. It will, in fact, have a pretty dramatic, immediate positive effect.
Look at the longevity studies. 20 to 30% of longevity is based upon genetics from the various studies that we've supported. So that means 70 to 80% of it is due to other factors, and many of those factors are under your control. Do everything your mother said. Exercise, eat a good diet, don't smoke, get a good night's rest, have meaning and purpose in your life, interact with other people.
We're at the most exciting time in science and medicine, where if we understand this very basic process of aging, we develop ways to intervene, we can potentially delay the onset of age-related diseases as a group. And that's going to have a remarkable impact on society and public health, without question. Our hope is that individuals like you will take on the responsibility to have healthy dietary choices, to have active lifestyles, to find meaning and purpose, to be socially engaged, so that we ensure a long health span.
You have your hands on the steering wheel of your aging. And it's true, you don't have control of all the pedals in the car, but you can steer it. And it's important to not feel like you have to follow the road that everyone is following. You may want to take the road less traveled.
Health, we all know, is far more valuable than anything, than money. We're giving you the gift of the most precious commodity that exists, healthy life. We're giving you a recipe for how to achieve the maximum healthy life that's available to you now, and we're telling you that the future of public health is focused on finding alternative ways of manufacturing more of the most precious commodity that you want, which is healthy life. That's all we're seeking. So what's in it for you? Everything.